Alright, so today we're going to be taking a look at Mobile Task Force field codes. Now, I saw a couple of video on the different types of MTFs a little while back, like maybe a little over 6 months ago, and really got an idea as to how MTFs are very heavily focused on a certain area, environment, SCP, and there was a lot of them, and I obviously don't remember them all. But as far as codes went, and as far as the thumbnail looked, I take these types of codes or messages that you would leave as far as markings, right? For example, in the Marine Corps, when you're going through an urban environment, we will mark a doorway, or not like the actual door, or on the side of a doorway to signify, hey, this room has been cleared at least once. Sometimes we get some engineering tape, tape some rocks to the side, and then throw them out a window so that way people coming in know that, hey, this building has been cleared at least once. And there's also some other things as far as, like, for example, if you're dealing with an IED environment, you have some shaving cream. If you see something suspicious off to your left and it looks like something that kind of looks sketchy, as far as, like, you can see like a little ant trail, like somebody was trying to bury something, see disturbed earth, you might even see an actual wire. Use some shaving cream to make like a line, and you could draw an X on that side to really signify, like, hey, stay on this side of the shaving cream, right? Because there's something over there, could be an ID, could not be. So it'd be like forms of communication without actually telling, like, showing the enemy. Because if they are watching you, because maybe it's remote activated and it's not a pressure plate, then they can activate it as you're walking through it. If they try to see you, like, verbally saying, like, hey, look at this, there's something here, right? So that way, just use some shaving cream, or try to be like nonchalant about it. And we also have some brevity codes. Sometimes it was like, hey, does anybody have a can of dip? And we would take opening it straight. Since it's a red can, it'd be like, nah, it wasn't actually an ID. Or if we say we got wintergreen, that means it's a positive ID on IAD there. Very many different ways to actually, I guess, use these codes. And from the thumbnail, that's kind of what it looks like. It's going to be the video here. In any case, the links to the original video and channel are going to be down in the description below, so go ahead and make sure that you check them out. Without wasting too much more time, let's go ahead and get right into the video.
Good day everyone, and welcome to SCP Illustrated, entry log 79. Something a little bit different today. We'll be looking at an SCP idea that never actually made it. This will be presented in the same format as the SCP classes and threat level videos, so with all that in mind, let's get into this. The following data release has been authorised by the following council members and administration staff. So, in 2013, an SCP wiki user by the username ToadKing put forward the idea of an SCP field code to be used by the mobile task forces, an unspoken code used to relay information between one team to another. He argued that with so many MTF agents going missing in alternate realities and to unknown threats in the field, they needed a way of alerting the next MTF team to what was going on in that area at that moment. This would quickly inform MTF teams to any dangers or situations, better preparing them to deal with them.
I feel like that would have been a good idea as far as, like, really implementing it, because obviously, like, in this universe, kind of like how he says here, alternate realities, unknown threats, it'd be kind of nice to know what you're going into, right? And maybe, for the most part, like, it's always in the shittiest moments where your fucking comms are just shit, right? And they just don't work. And then you having to do other ways as far as, like, being able to communicate information. You could do hand and arm signals. You could do what was that thing called? You would use it for, like, a buzz saw at night, a fly panel or something like that during the day, or some 550 cord attached to like a little glow stick, or IR fucking glow stick. It's been a while. You can use that as different forms of communication, and kind of like how I said in the beginning, especially in urban environments, we do mark, for the most part, with chalk, right? As far as, like, marking buildings that we've cleared, anything like that. I mean, pretty simple, not a whole lot, and it's pretty much decided as far as, like, how your squad will want to do things, or how maybe your company is going to decide how the symbols look. So, not so many symbols. It's enough to be able to memorize, and symbols are pretty easy to identify.
The idea was born out of the hobo signs phenomena. Homeless people would mark certain areas with chalk symbols that would indicate things such as free handouts, police patrol the area and watch out for the dogs, etc. Sadly, this idea was never implemented into practice amongst the MTF but the symbols still remain to this day on the old SCP forum. Now, I find them fascinating, and with that in mind, I wanted to bring them all to you. Now, while they did not become one of the MTF practices, they did become part of something. I will talk about that at the end. In the meantime, here are the SCP MTF symbols as designed by Toad King. The Foundation has been here. This area or location has been previously explored by MTF operatives. Unsafe place. This area is not safe for MTF operatives to be. This area should be avoided. If unavoidable, extreme caution must be taken to avoid unnecessary risk or injury. Space distance distortion. Local topography is unstable. Depth perception is unreliable. Both are subject to radical changes. Do not follow the little girl. Do not make physical contact. MTF operatives are to avoid all forms of physical contact with the object or entity. Physical contact may cause unpredictable results including displacement, disease, mutation, or even death. Danger on the other side. Unspecified hostile threats are present on the opposite side of this structure or surface.
I just realized, in order for these symbols to actually work, it has to be placed in an area that's before entry into whatever area you're going to go in. For example, this one, right? Hostile threat on the other side of the structure. Now, unless you can hear it, and maybe you just hear like a big growling, and you know something over there that probably doesn't like you and want to rip you apart. Pretty obvious, right? You place it on a wall that is adjacent to it or on the other side of it. And really, if you couldn't hear it and you just went through, one person has to make it back. Or, for example, also, if someone's going into like a different reality or something, somebody went somewhere, one of them has to come back to be able to write the symbol. I mean, if they write the symbol within the area that they're at that point, it doesn't make any much sense, because then the MTFs are going to already be exposed. Although it could be kind of a heads up, like, hey, you just stumbled into some fucked up shit, and you better get ready. So I feel like, these... See, it's kind of hard, because for the most part, a lot of these codes, or like, for example, in the Marine Corps, whenever we would make any marking, that's because we've really gone in and done something in that area. And considering this is the SCP universe, and them going into an area can get murked, just like that. So that would stand to say that at least one person would have to make it out alive, in each occasion, in order to do the marking, if that makes sense.
Rooms move, area changes. Local topography is subject to change. Maps and standard navigation procedures are non-viable. Do not make eye contact. MTF operatives are not to make eye contact with any entity. Hostile being. A hostile entity has been identified in this location. MTF operatives are to proceed with extreme caution. Stay together. All MTF operatives must stay in groups, no fewer than 2 people to a group. Get out fast. All MTF units are to immediately retreat to a safe location. Missing in action or killed in action MTF operatives are to be abandoned. Safe place to rest. MTF operatives are safe to rest and check equipment. Equipment failure. A property of the location is causing equipment failure. This could include communications, GPS, firearms, etc. Check each one in turn frequently and report any failures to command. If command is unreachable due to communication failure, inform the team captain or commander. Stay in the light. MTF operatives are to stay in the light at all costs. Use of additional light sources to increase the amount of light are encouraged. Stay in the darkness. Stay in the darkness at all costs. All light sources are to be extinguished where possible. Depending on the situational definition of darkness, infrared night or thermal vision optics might remain a viable option.
It's starting to seem like a lot of these are very directed at certain SCPs. Like this one kind of reminds me of the London, and the one with the little girl seems like the witch girl. And I don't know, it's seeming like a lot of these are very specific. Now, there's been quite a few already that have been shown. Now, as far as remembering all this, because at a certain point, you don't want the only people that you want to know what these symbols mean are going to be the guys who you're with. Now, I understand having a little cheat sheet, but yeah, I was thinking if the enemy got a hold of it, whatever SCP it was, they could use it against them. But I don't think that would be the case in this scenario. I think that's more of a if you're going against like actual humans. So maybe having a little cheat sheet, right, would probably be beneficial instead of having to remember everything. Or maybe using like an acronym with the with the letters. Like for this one, it'd be SITD, right? Almost STD. But something at least to really simplify all these drawings or all these codes, in my opinion.
Don't give up. Surrender or lack of willpower will not herald a positive outcome. MTF operatives are to continue on mission. It is not human. The entity you have encountered or are yet to encounter is not of human origin. Use caution. Guns are no good. Standard firearms are not viable as a suitable weapon for this situation or encounter. Seek alternate weapons or refrain from engaging the subject. Team member vanished here. An MTF operative disappeared in this location. Proceed with caution and stay vigilant. Voices heard here. Unidentified voices were heard in this location. Cannot be damaged. The entity or object cannot be damaged by any known means. Someone else is here. An unidentified entity exists in this location. Proceed with caution. Hostile environment. The local environment is hostile towards human life. Extreme caution is advised. Do not look away. A direct line of sight must be maintained with the object or entity at all times.
See, now this one looks like it's relating more to SCP-173, right? The statue. I do like that within the SCP universe, though, so it's always very specific as far as like everything in any little one. I feel like these codes, though, would have been very cool to really implement into some of the SCP documents or like the little stories, right? Because I can also see how, for example, if there's a certain scenario where an MTF went somewhere and all they left were behind all these symbols, and then there's like another MTF that comes in behind them and is trying to figure out kind of what happened, what's going on. I feel like that would make for a pretty interesting story.
MTF operatives are to inform one another when they are breaking eye contact with the subject. Team member killed. An MTF operative was killed in this location. Contact lost with command. All contact with command has been lost at this point. MTF captains and or commanders are to assume full mission command until contact with central command has been re-established. Proceed with caution. The area ahead might pose a threat to MTF operatives. Do not trust them. MTF operatives may be experiencing cognitive impairment. MTF operatives are advised to disregard any instruction or vocalization not coming from another MTF operative or a secure channel with mission control. If MTF operatives cannot make a distinction between mission control and the false mission control, operatives are to disregard mission control instructions and the team commander or captain will assume the mission command responsibility. Breach. An SCP has breached containment, or this surface needs to be breached in order to continue. Symbols have been compromised. MTF operatives are to disregard any and all field code symbols. You are being watched. MTF operatives are being watched, monitored, or studied. Pray while shooting. MTF are to pray while engaging hostile entities. Alternate reality entered. MTF operatives have entered a reality different from our own. Operatives are advised to ensure a feasible method of returning to our own reality and to proceed with caution.
It's kind of like when I was referring to it, right? As far as like someone going past the line or going past this place where the marking is going to be at, and then having to come back and actually put the mark in there. But then again, in this case, I feel like they could do the whole rope tie and then pull them back, right? Maybe.
Not hostile if left alone. MTF operatives are not to provoke or interact with the object or entity. MTF operatives are to leave the object or entity undisturbed and continue on mission. Do not fall asleep here. MTF operatives are to not rest or sleep in this location. Proceed to or retreat to a safe location to rest or sleep. SCP subject last seen here. The subject was last seen in this location. MTF operatives are to report this to Central Command and continue on mission. Room clear. This room has been cleared of threats or anything of interest by previous MTF.
I was waiting for this one because I heard the only one that would probably been close to this was probably the first one when he said MTF has been here, or the SCP Foundation has been here. But I hadn't seen one from like a room clear yet, so it's good to see that they had that there.
Operatives. Does not stay dead. The life form is either immortal, indestructible, or will reanimate at an unknown time. MTF operatives are to remain on high alert.
682.
Stay quiet. MTF operatives are to cease all verbal communication with each other and command. MTF operatives are to maintain noise discipline at all times. Hand gesture commands are the only approved form of communication. The local environment is to be observed for signs of possible audible disturbances. For example, debris, leaves, rocks, etc. Do not be taken alive. If escape becomes impossible, or being taken alive poses a threat to other MTF operatives or the well-being of the MTF agent or humanity in general, MTF operatives are instructed to terminate themselves and each other if necessary. So as I said, these symbols were not taken further as part of the MTF program sadly, but they were taken forward and adapted as symbols to be used in the Wanderer's Library, which is attributed to the Serpent's Hand, which is a group of interest to the SCP Foundation. Now I don't have the time to go into all of that, but in a nutshell, the Serpent's Hand believed that the world should know about the anomalies in life instead of locking them up. They often clash with the Foundation and the GOC from time to time, and the Wanderer's Library is where they store all of their knowledge. In the SCP tale Lessons Learned, the SCP Foundation conducted a raid on that library with mixed results. Some MTF came out 13 days later, but decades had passed for them. Others came out unable to recount what even happened, and others described creatures and shelves warping and changing before their eyes. These are the symbols from the library. I will leave links to all the relevant follow-up documents in the comments section for you all to look at and read further if you wish.
So, as far as it still being... So, it's not that it was completely disregarded or just kind of left in the old forum, like kind of he was saying. It was adapted into the... at least some of the symbols, or like a reasoning for... Or, not reasoning, but for the use of a code. It was at least used in the Wanderer's Library. So it's kind of got something, although I would assume now, as I'm reading here, a lot of the symbols are very different and mean other things, like watch shadow, poison in air. They look like dogs. What's that one SCP? They kind of had like a dog-like features, and it was like a kind of a little pack. I don't know, I can't remember off the top of my head. Marked for raid, friendly, do not fear. Pass repeats, don't eat the food, stay quiet. Okay, so yeah, a lot of this, stay quiet. I think I remember seeing this one. It looks different though from the symbol. So it at least had some form of implementation as far as within the SCP universe, which I think is still pretty cool, but it also would have been cool. It made a lot of sense for MTF members to have that. But I mean, it would be very interesting to kind of see how MTFs would react when they know kind of exactly, not necessarily everything to expect, but kind of what to expect. Because for the most part, from what I've seen, they kind of go into anything with information they get passed on from like the higher chain of command. But sometimes that information isn't very solid, so they're kind of winging it on the spot. So it'd be nice to kind of see them at least have less of a disadvantage when going into, like, for example, an engagement or something.
And that concludes this little video looking at the MTF field code proposal.
Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about that for a minute. I strongly think that this should have been implemented, or should be implemented still, just because I feel like it's a great idea, and it makes the MTF have more, I don't know if lore to them, but it could lead to a lot more interesting things. And also, if MTFs are supposed to be like these top operator type guys, right? It would make sense for them to have some form of marketing to be able to communicate with each other, as far as like leaving little messages. But obviously, you can't really write out everything, right? So draw a little picture. Hopefully, everybody understands what it actually means, and they can at least have some kind of idea of what is beyond this symbol or this code, right? and you can decide to either continue forward, maybe back away, whatever it may be. And also, I believe I said it during the video that some of these really seem to also specifically focus on a certain SCP. I think the Witch Girl one, the 682, the 173. It would have been nice to kind of see the engagement as far as, like, for example, with 682, how exactly did he get him or capture him, right? And maybe this could have been more explored in as far as like the actual codes and everything. Because as far as I know, I don't think 682 actually has some part of the document where he was actually captured, as far as I can remember. Or for example, like 173, right? And maybe these codes could have had some initial help as far as that kind of fill that area, if that makes sense. But I strongly believe that these should have been implemented a little more. What do you all think? Kind of like how he mentioned. Let me know down in the comments below. Think these were a good idea? Maybe add a couple more. Maybe you can take certain ones away and kind of group some of them together, so you can remember. So you don't have to remember as many symbols. Let me know. But in any case, that's gonna go ahead and do it for this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Really does help me a lot. Hit that sub button if you didn't like it, and leave me a little comment to maybe what it was. Until then, I'll see you all in the next video.